Welcome to our webinar, everyone. We are excited to have y'all here. We are going to be talking about how and why to work with investors. And we have a wonderful presenter here with us today. We have Mitch Dominski. He has a plethora of experience across all spectrums, whether that's property management, whether that's investing, whether it's the agent side. He's done it all. He has tons of experience. I had the pleasure of also hearing him speak on burnout, and he did a wonderful presentation on that. So I just want to say thank you to Mitch for being here. We are really blessed to have him and him sharing his knowledge with all of us. And I'm going to hand the reins over to him real quick and let him tell you a little bit about his background. Mitch, thank you for being here.
Ben, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here and glad to, if you talk to any investor, they love talking about what they do. So here we go. But I started in 1998 buying real estate. In 2001, after I got going, I started an investor-friendly real estate brokerage. And shortly after that, I found out I was really good at finding deals. So I was helping clients find properties. And during that process, I had my investors reaching out to me saying, "Hey, do you know a plumber? Can you help me find a tenant?" And we ended up getting into property management shortly after that. So we grew it to about 550 doors. In 2018, I bought a Homevestor franchise, which is We Buy Ugly Houses. So I flipped roughly 8 to 12, depending on the activity, 8 to 12 homes a year. Sometimes I keep some for myself. We sold our property management company in 2022. And recently, I just wrapped up shooting videos we did a recording on Investor Series. Basically, it's a training series I got together with Keller Williams. That is being launched April 1st, so here in 10 days. So I'm pretty excited about that. I've always wanted to do it, so I'm real interested to see if anybody cares as much as I do. So, but that's me.
Well, Mitch, again, thank you for being here. Everyone, Mitch, like I said, tons of experience all across all the spectrums of real estate here. He's really great at what he does. He currently owns 32 properties, free and clear. So we're going to learn a lot from him. And again, we are very thankful to have him. Thank you, Mitch. So real quick, we got a lot of stuff to go over today. I want to real quick touch on who is this relevant for and what are we going to be talking about. So for our audience, for our real estate agents, you might have investors that you're currently working with, or you might be looking to work with investors. So this is going to help you start thinking about how can I start working with investors, but also how can I help them make smart investment decisions, not just have them buy a property. How can we get them to make smart investment, decisions and set up for success? Now, I want to be clear here for our real estate agents. I am not recommending that you get into property management if you don't know anything about property management. Working with them to help them buy the property, that's okay. But managing it beyond just the leasing aspect, that might not be your cup of tea. So I am not encouraging you to get into property management. I want to be clear that y'all hear me on that. For our property managers, this is something that might help you increase your door count. This might help you work with a person who said they're interested in investing. They haven't invested yet, and they know that they want someone to manage their property. So this will be helpful for you in the sense of saying, how do we make sure we're setting these people up for success as well? So that's how it's relevant for all our folks here. So what are we talking about? We got three main things here that we're going to go over. We're first going to start on why do people invest in real estate and what are some of the benefits. Then we're going to get into how to qualify and increase the readiness of a potential investor. And then we're going to wrap up some with how do you manage the emotions and expectations that come with investment properties. So to kick us off, let's get into the 101 on investing. And Mitch, could you talk to us a little bit about why people like investing in real estate and why it's a good investment?
Yeah, when I started researching in the mid 90s before the internet, I was looking for something that I could start on the side, basically call it a side hustle these days, something that I can get started while I had my corporate job. And in my research, sitting at Barnes and Noble, reading a book, I came across this statement that said 90% of the wealthiest people are in real estate. So that kind of struck with me, the whole idea of what they call mailbox money, kind of gravitated towards, it rang to me, it spoke to me. So I started doing my research on it. And not only are we trying to build wealth over time, but by owning property, the government has tax benefits to that. They're encouraging that investors go out and buy something, and they have depreciation that you can write off some of these, some of your income. It's also, and we're seeing this recently with inflation, it's a hedge against inflation, not only the value of the property, but also your cash flow. But the advantage that I had with working with, we had roughly over 200 owners, and I would get phone calls from them asking them about what their goals are and what they're trying to do with real estate investing. And it really came down to this one thing, and we want to replace our income someday, or at least supplement it. My sister, who recently got let go, it's going to be a great source of income for her and her husband. And that's all we're trying to do at the end of the day, is have this passive stream of income that that grows over time.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense that a lot of people, they're looking at this as a way to either create a new or a passive income stream while leveraging their cash as best possible. I know you mentioned, like I said, that stream of income and a few reasons as motivators. Are there a few other motivators, or could you go a bit deeper into these motivators that matter to investors?
Yeah, I'm going to kind of weave them in all together. So when you are out buying a property, let's say it's a $250,000 property, you're typically putting down, you're not paying $250,000. I mean, I guess you could, but one of the keys of buying an asset like this is you have the ability to leverage your money. So with 10 or 20% down, so we're talking about 25 to $50,000 down, you can actually own a bigger asset, and you can grow out with smaller capital that you have, the cash, and grow this bigger asset. So if you had 4 homes and worth $1 million, and you have appreciation based on uh, um, what what goes on over time, that house can grow, those assets can grow pretty fast. Again, the tax benefits, we get to depreciate if it's a single family over 27 and a half years, the value of the property. So that kind of reduces our obligation to the government. Again, I talked about leverage. You have the ability to buy a bigger asset. Inflation hedge that works on both sides, not only the value of the asset, but also my rents are going up. In fact, in Columbus here, there was an article that was written yesterday, or maybe it was the day before, that we are the fastest growing rental market. So it's been nice to ride that wave. And then cash flow, which is what we're talking about here, is if we can quantify what that amount is it 5 or is it 10 grand a month? How do you get there? And that's kind of what we helped out our clients.
Yeah, a lot of good motivators there that affect the bottom line, how you can protect your assets, and ways that you can leverage and scale faster to make your money work for you. So I really love a lot of those reasons that you gave there. I know we also talked, again, on how do you create a positive income stream. That's the goal from day one. It's not necessarily always that timeline, but are there some keys that can help someone achieve this, or ways that you would approach or recommend that they approach or think about that timeline?
Yeah, I mean, it's very simple. At least the words are, and the process obviously takes time, but you got to have capital. You got to have money down. Yes, you can leverage and borrow a little bit, but you need capital for down payment, for rehab, owning the property, repairs. Um, and that's just one part of it. The other part of it is education, which, everybody here is trying to get educated, learn a little bit more about how to be a better investor. So I can, and when we were helping out people, we help them buy it, they help them fix it, and they got to help them manage it. So that's something that, as an investor, you need to learn and continue to learn. Then you also need patience. This is a get rich slow program, but I could pretty much guarantee all you have to do is wait 20 years, and you'll see the results. So you just got to get your mind around waiting 20 years.
I love that. That's a great 101 and just kind of intro to why people invest, what are some of the keys, and just some of the ways to get, positive income streams. And I really
Right.
like the patience aspect. I know that's, such an important one because especially when we're talking today's world, we've got a lot of people in the instant gratification world, and that's just not the reality with real estate. We got to make sure that we keep that mindset that it's a long game. It's not, get rich quick scheme. So I love that you emphasize that early.
Yep.
So let's shift gears a little bit here and let's kind of talk about how we qualify and assess an investor's, readiness. So once you either meet someone or identify someone who's interested in potentially buying an investment property, how do you qualify them and what are you looking for as, maybe red flags that they're just not a good use of your time?
Yeah, I'm going to preface that by saying when I put together the investor series, I had my son in mind. My son's 25. He just got his first job last year and he wants to get in real estate investing. So when I designed it, it was basically how do I set, my family up or my son on how to move forward. And I don't want him to lose sleep at night or worry about things. So what can I say or convey to him that would make sense to him? So along with that, um, I had to have the talk with him and, not the talk that was earlier when he was younger, but, I had to talk with him because I wanted to make sure that he was serious about it. When I talk to an investor and they say something like, hi, I'm all in. Um, that's not always a good thing. I was all in the beginning and I had to diversify into a 401k. It's just one other investment vehicle that's available to us. So I want to really find out, you know, are they thinking about the entire picture? Also, I want to test their gauge of how long they've been thinking about it. For me, it took me 4 years before I felt comfortable moving forward on buying my first property. In fact, I drove my wife crazy where she said, would you just buy something already? If someone just came off of an investor seminar, uh, basically, they're coming in hot, and I see a lot of the crypto bros out there coming in hot. Hey, I want to go do real estate investing. It's sexy. And by the way, it's been sexy for 25 years since I've been doing it. But I just want to make sure that they're going into anything like this with their eyes wide open because it's not the same as a money market or I'm sorry, a mutual fund where you just kind of set it and forget it. So there is involvement from an investor side that you got to do. So, and the third thing is determine if their house is in order. And if someone when I kind of go through scenarios with them about emergency fund or what's their liquid capital look like, I want to make sure that if I call them about a hot water tank that they have the money to do it because that's what they're supposed to do. But if someone is comfortable putting stuff on a credit card, which I am not, um, I just want to have those conversations. Again, I want to make sure that they are going to be in a good place. So
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Like you've got to have the capital to make sure that you can, cover those rainy or crappy days. Because if you don't, you wind up in a bad kind of position, and that's not ideal. So, in terms of you mentioned, someone who comes in hot and ready, and maybe they're trying to run before they're ready to crawl. How do you approach slowing someone down without, necessarily turning them off and saying no or losing them as an interested client? But how do you kind of, reset their pace, maybe?
right. Um, Basically, what I have done is, there's so much education needs to take place. So first of all, what's your house look like in order? Do you have consumer debt? Have you gone to a bank yet and talked to them about getting an investor loan? Sitting down with maybe a local bank or a community bank that works with an investor, they're investor friendly type of bank. What do they require? Because what you think that you need 3% down on a regular, FHA loan, that's not the same for an investor. So they need to know what is expected from them to get, to be lendable. The next one would be, why don't you find out about walking through a house? So if you had a real estate agent that was, savvy with working with investors, maybe you buy them coffee or a beer, go with them on a property that might be interesting. And you just start going through the process of what does this look like? What is this property going to take to fix up? You're kind of doing the reps of and getting yourself emotionally ready on what it's going to feel like by walking through a property and seeing a house that needs $28,000 to get it rent ready. How are you getting those numbers? So there's a lot of work that can be done before they even buy their first one, but those are some of the things that you can do to kind of get ready also.
I love that. It's kind of like, give them a little bit of a taste, start walking them through the process, let them kind of mock the experience. And then that one, it educates them, but two, it also, maybe slows them down and gets them thinking, and they're not as eyes wide open from the seminar thinking like, oh, this is great. So I really love that advice. That's great advice. In terms of, all right, so now we've met someone, we've kind of qualified them, we believe they're a good fit. Are there specific ways you'd recommend someone focusing, on emphasizing to help prepare them for that investment and just kind of focus there to help get them ready?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big Dave Ramsey fan, and I know even though he says no debt on investment property, I'll disagree. So I'm Ramsey-ish, Dave-ish, as he says. So I'm like 95% there. But I really want to I think it's very important to have your house in order. I told my son when he got his job, now that you got your job, son, Matt, I want to make sure that you're ready to go. So first, I want to make sure you had an emergency fund if he lost his job that he can survive. So that's 3 to 6 months of his expenses. The second thing was he needs to buy a car. He can only drive his mom's car for so long. He did buy it from us, but it's getting old. It's 15, 16 years old. So you're going to have a car pretty soon. So make sure you got money for that. And then the third thing was I told him to save $15,000 on top of that. And that was, if I know that he can go out there, I mean, if you take a look at it, that's probably $35,000 that he needs to save up for somebody that's making, you know, not the average income right now, since it's his first job. That's a lot of money. But if I show that he's disciplined and intentional about doing that, then that's one more thing that I think that he's going to be ready to go and be qualified. So um, things like that. One of the questions also is how much do you have to invest? So since I'm going to be working with him, you need to find out again from that lender how much they need to invest because they might need 20% down. And in our example of $250,000 home, that's 50 grand. If it's an 80% loan, you also have to fix it up and get it rent ready. So is that $2,000 or is it $20,000? I don't know yet until you see the property. And then third, you got to have enough money to carry that until it's rented. So you got probably 2 or 3 months of utilities, insurance, lawn care, or snow remover, or whatever it might be. And then you got to have money for in case you have a major repair. So, if you get a phone call and you need a new roof, you better have that $12,000 for that new roof. So again, it's all about what I found, the more capital you have, the better you can sleep at night. So between that and the education, it gets easier. So again, the whole goal of investing, it's a blessing, not a curse. And that's what I'm trying to avoid when I work with my clients, especially, being a broker / property manager. I'm building a relationship here. This is not, one house every 5 years. This is 5 houses every year. So I'm going into it like we're building this thing out. And, a lot of the people that I manage for, they're good friends of mine. So
That makes sense. I really like how you kind of broke it down into different buckets too, in the sense of how do we need to make sure that financially we're ready? Our personal emergency fund, what do we need to initially invest? What do we need to maintain or be able to continue the runway while we're waiting for it to get leased? Doing some quick mental math, I know that we were using 250,000 as an example. Some markets might be different on kind of what their average home price is, but would you say that's around $80,000, give or take, between the different buckets that someone's needing to have?
Yeah, it could very easily. So, then you get into, well, I've got most of the cash down, but the rest of it, I think I'm gonna go get a home equity loan, on my personal residence. So it's, I would rather you know that you need 80,000 and someone's saying, "Oh, wait a minute, I don't have 80,000. Okay, so how does that feel for you to go out and put something on your credit card at 22%? So again, they have to answer that question, and I'm just making sure as an agent that I'm asking it.
That makes sense. We're trying to set them up for success, so we want to make sure what their expectation is matches up with how we see the appropriate way to invest. So I think that makes a lot of sense. In terms of some things that we can be doing, all right, we've got someone who wants to work with us. What are things that we can be doing to build that investor's comfort level with working with us as an agent?
Um, so we have about 8 agents right now. They're all investors. And whenever I have a client come in, they're like, "Hey, I'm looking for more properties, or can you help me out?" And I have trained my agents on how to work with investors, but they're also investors themselves. And I'll tell you that when you tell someone that you're an investor and they're looking for help, it just raises the bar on your credibility, because now all of a sudden we're on the same goals. We're trying to both better our lives. And if you're an investor, then you've been through this before and you can really, speak to it. So that's part of it. You can also provide education and resources. Obviously, there's podcasts out there. Rental Beast is doing this for their clients. So if you're an agent, you can provide this stuff, especially with the NAR settlement that came down on Thursday, Friday. All you agents and brokers out there know about this. I think it's, with us going out doing buyer broker agreements now, we're going to figure out this summer on how we're going to present that. But if you're going to present to them saying, "Look, I got to make sure, if you want me to represent you, I need to make sure that I'm getting paid. So how do we, this is what I'm going to do for you on top of helping you find a house. I'm going to start sending you some resources that's going to help you get your education further down the road. And hey, I'm going to send you this podcast. Check out this blog I found. Hey, by the way, there's a meetup this weekend. You want to meet me there and I'll buy you a beer." And being a true resource on helping an investor build out their portfolio is helpful. So again, we're getting into other investors and other groups. So what I might do, or what agents have done, some of my agents only have 2 or 3 units. If they got together or if they found somebody that was pretty aggressive, they're coming into town, I might join them. Obviously I'm their broker, but I'll sit down with them and say, "What are you trying to do? I would go through the exact things that we're talking about, but sometimes they just feel like they're part of a bigger team. The investor does, that they could say, "Wow, if I need any help, I can always call Mitch." So.
I love that. I know you were focusing there a little bit on the side of, it helps to be an investor. And I know some of our people here probably aren't at that stage yet. So what would you recommend to them who aren't just quite at that investment stage to, try to get someone comfortable to working with you?
Push rewind and watch this all again. That's where I would start. I mean, they can really get connected with people. I'm willing to bet there's somebody in your brokerage that does it. You can really immerse yourself in a lot of education, especially, I mean, we have meetups here like every other week that you can run into people, and it's typically the same 30 or 40 people, but it's a great way to network. Um, but again, they say that real estate agents all get the best deals. Um, when you walk into a property that might work, you got to stop right there and say, "Before we go any further, I might be interested in this property. So, um, again, it's back to education. Um, there's a ton out there, especially with the internet. So,
Yeah, that makes sense. It's kind of one of those ones where it's like focus on growing your sphere, growing the network of people who you know who can be resources and learning from them. And then, if you don't know the answer, you're able to say, hey, you know what? I got a guy or I got a gal. Let me direct you over to him. Or like you said, let's meet up. We can buy him coffee, buy her coffee, and just kind of pick their brains and get you a little more comfortable.
yep, yep.
Perfect. So as we start working with investors and they start actually, getting more towards making that investment or kind of actually do it, what are some critical things that you think they should be doing to make sure that they are successful with investing?
Yeah, I think that there's, the education part, we got to assume that the capital part is it's pretty cut and dry. Do you have your house in order? Do you have the money? If you don't, go make it. Call me when you got it, so we're ready to go. So that's one part of it. But there's the education part. There's almost two parts to it. There's the education part all the way up until you buy it. And then there's the education and once you own it and managing the property and make sure it's successful. Because uh, like myself, I spent 4 years um, researching on what I was going to do. In 1998, I ended up buying a 15 unit and a 24 unit, and I found out I didn't know anything about managing properties. So the education on the front end is a lot of the stuff that we've talked about, finding out what banks want. I think it's a great thing to kind of walk through doing an offer or doing an offer with an agent, or maybe even meeting up with another investor and go and see their properties and what they're doing and why are they fixing it up this way versus something else. Um, I think it's a good idea to maybe, if you have an agent that works with you a little bit, maybe you have a contractor come in there and price it out or do a scope of work. So there's again, a lot of education you can get on the front end that, you can do as much as you can before you actually buy your first one. So when you actually find one that is a deal, and as we say in baseball, you can't steal in slow motion, you're ready to go and you're not going to hesitate. There's no paralysis by analysis. So that's the front end. The second part of it is managing the property. We can do a deep dive on that on a whole different level. Are you going to manage it, or is a third party manager going to manage it from the time that you own the property, fixing it up, market the property, selecting a tenant, they move in, what's all the paperwork required, how are you going to handle calls, work orders, how are you going to do lease renewals, how do you do an eviction, all that stuff. So again, we're going through education. Myself managing that many properties for that long, I've pretty much seen everything, including guns, needles, and a dead person. So I have the benefit of knowing all that stuff, but if you're going to self-manage, you have to learn that yourself. So, and then once you get going, it's patience. It just takes time.
Yeah. And again, I love that you're emphasizing patience. It doesn't happen overnight. And I also like how you broke down the components of learning into, a couple different avenues where it's like, we've got our preliminary learning and, how to buy a property, how to finance it, but then our education keeps going on, or there's ways to mock the experience before you're an investor so that you're starting to determine what does this look like? What are my expectations? Is this a good fit for me? And we're really just making sure that they're growing their knowledge before actually, getting into it and then realizing, oh my God, what have I done?
Right. Yeah. Again, I don't want that for anybody. I'm thinking my son and, I don't want that for him or anybody else. So,
Yeah, that makes sense. So let's switch gears a little bit. I think we covered kind of, assessing prospects' readiness and qualifying them a little bit. Now let's get into the emotions and the expectations of, investing. And you mentioned being able to sleep at night. And I think that's so, key for everybody here. So can you discuss a few keys to managing the emotions?
yeah, I think what I found, again, this is my journey. And I can only share what I know and what worked for me. Uh, Education and capital, it just solved my risk on that side of it and my tolerance for what I was trying to do. There is a big picture. At the end of the day, I wanted to own this much property that generated this much money free and clear. So that's a daunting task over 25 years. And um, the more I learned and more understood, we actually built our entire business around, and this is everybody. If something wrong or something bad goes on or something didn't go the way you wanted to, why? I mean, it's first of all, take blame for it. It's your fault because you didn't set it up correctly. But we always ask, how do we make sure that doesn't happen again? Do I have to have another disclosure? Do I need to be more clear when they're signing the lease? I need to do a better checklist when I'm walking through the property when I buy it. So the more you know, you're going to feel a lot more comfortable. Again, it's reps too. So, just again, I'm going to use baseball all day, I guess, but you're when you've seen enough curveballs, you know how it's going to react, and you can punch it. So, um, it's it the more that when I would talk to a client, obviously I can't tell them everything that's going to go on, but again, I'm getting a read on where they are, and I might shock them a little bit, and just kind of test them a little bit because, again, I want to make sure they can sleep at night. Um, they also part of it is a lot of people they don't understand the numbers in a deal. Where are you getting your rent projections from? Is it one person? Is it, aren't you calling your property manager? What's Zillow say? What does Rentometer say? What is, apartments.com? You could go on there and kind of do a quick search. Once you triangulate, so it's going to be a range, but you also have your expenses that come out of it. Not only do you have your loan payment, taxes, and insurance, because your insurance is going to be a little bit more for an investment property, but you got to take care of the lawn, especially if you have a double or a four family. A lot of people forget about taking care of the lawn or snow removal. Um, you might have a rental registration for your county. All these expenses that come up that a lot of investors don't remember or are not considering. Another thing on top of that is, I would say probably the number one mistake that I made and a lot of investors make is they think, all right, I'm going to buy this $250,000 property. I'm going to put 20 grand to fix it up. I'm done. Well, Ben, I'm willing to bet that you have a to-do list at home. And like any other house out there, they have work that needs to get done. Maybe you don't do it immediately, but you definitely need to do some outdoor trim paint or whatever it might be. So a lot of people don't remember to have money sitting aside for CapEx or capital expenditures. So these are the big ticket items: the windows, the roof, the driveway. I did like 11 driveways a couple years ago. Trees that are overgrown, that are coming close to the house and create other problems. So that's another thing that you got to make sure that you're keeping track of. By the way, it's 2%. Save 2% of the value of the home per year for CapEx, and you'll be okay. And then be familiar with markets and trends. Is there an area of town that is growing, or there's new development that's going on? We have a children's hospital near us. They've been growing out and around that area. A lot of the doctors and nurses are staying, so we're seeing an trend going up over there. But it's also about what is done inside of properties. LVP, when LVP came out, everybody was putting in their kitchens and bathrooms, which is great. But grays are out, whites are back in, and just keeping ahead on what the market and what trends are going on out there. So
I love that you also mentioned, appealing to the renter's taste, and how critical that is. A lot of times, I think a lot of people think trends meaning just the analytics, where's hot, kind of things, but actually thinking, what do rentals, what do renters want to see in a property? What matters to renters? What are they actually looking for? I think that's huge.
Yeah, one thing I want to add to that is so my portfolio, not everybody has their own level of quality that they have out there. And I've always, for most of my clients, I had to pull them down to what my thinking was. And my thinking was that I would have the nicest property on the street for a couple of reasons. They would show better, so they look really good online. I end up attracting more tenants, better tenants, and they stay longer. And that's the key of real estate investing. If you got tenants that stay long, that's where it's at. So when we go in for renewal and they look around at this house that's still the nicest one on the street or close to it, because now they live there, and they look around and see what's available, and they're like, why would I want to move? I got to pay, so I got to pay to move, and the hassle of all that. So that's what I did.
That makes sense. It's a winning formula. I know when we were doing some of the preliminary just conversations about our topic, you were saying, I think the average in Columbus is like 16 months, for someone staying in a property. Whereas at your company, you have gotten that timeline over 3 years just using this principle of saying, we're going to put a little bit in, we're going to keep them nice, we're going to take pride in what we do, and, we're going to try to have the nicest one on the block. And that's the name of the game, is better qualified applicants and retention, being able to prevent them from churning and having to replace the tenant. So I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yes, sir.
In terms of, now that we've kind of covered the emotion side and how you need to plan to make sure that you help manage your emotions, can you touch a little bit on setting expectations? I know we've kind of touched on it some throughout this, but let's just go over it and say, here's some best practices for realistic expectations.
Right. Again, this investment is just another way of creating, we're setting up this mailbox money, or this, this annuity type of income coming in. So, with managing or having assets, you cannot set it and forget it. You have to be involved. The properties that I have, I don't manage my own stuff, even though I own a property management company. The company that bought us is managing it. And I have to manage my manager. She's asking me, do you accept this tenant? What should we do about, this eviction? They have money in escrow, so we have to take care of that. So you're still involved with managing it. Now they can do all the blocking and tackling for you, but do you want to give them the ability to write a check for $4,000? You probably want to be involved and know that that's coming. You don't want any surprises. So that's part of it. Also, I tell people when they're getting in real estate investing that people can be dishonest. They're liars. They can be lying and exaggerate or don't complete a job. And I'm not just talking about tenants. I'm talking about contractors. So it can be disheartening sometimes. When you've done it as many times as I have, it gets easier after 1,000 times. But that's just the human nature that we have to deal with. So
I think that makes a lot of sense. And it sounds like with setting expectations, it's kind of similar to, how we're qualifying someone. We're kind of mocking out situations and saying, how could this play out? Let's think about this. And through doing that exercise, it kind of helps ensure that our expectations match the reality of what investing is actually like.
yep.
So perfect. Well, I know going into this leads the natural question of, what are some of those scenarios that we might be able to use to test mental readiness? Do you have a few that you kind of like, and how would you recommend, someone listening and responding to it?
Yeah. By the way, these are all real life situations, but tenant calls and says, we're trying to collect rent on the same time we're, in the middle of evicting this person. And he calls up and says, yeah, you can do whatever you want, but I'm going to pour concrete down your plumbing. I use that scenario just to kind of get a gauge, because when people typically hear that, you might have a lot of people just going, you know, what do you do? So I mean, obviously we worked out of it. Look, you're not going to do that. Let's, you know, you signed a contract. All we want to do is get paid. You can't live there for free. So I don't want to kick you out. I just want you to pay. So, it's really, you have to, you know, um, sometimes you get on the phone, you want to bow up and go toe to toe with somebody, and that's not always the best way to go. So, um, also we've had a tenant, you know, you know how difficult it is to evict somebody when they're going through a cancer scare. And you're that person, you know, they still have responsibilities to you, to a contract. You know, during COVID was a great example. People on a, you know, what are you going to do? Are you going to be that guy? And if we were going to be that company, we would have been all over the news. So sometimes you have to shift and watch out for that. But we had a tenant one time move in. She was calling in every other day with repairs. She was, you know, a new mom at home, and she probably grew up in a nicer area of town, and she expected this 100-year-old home to be like a 10-year-old home, with everything being perfect. And you know, sometimes doors squeak and things are loose. So one way to stop that is, you know, look, if this is not a real repair, we are going to be charging you for a service trip. So um, you know, another thing we like to ask, you know, what's your husband say about this, or your wife, or your spouse? Are they on board? Because, you know, if I call you with a new furnace for $4,000, how's your evening gonna go? So it just gets people thinking about real life examples. I'm trying to scare them a little bit, but at the same time, I'm trying to give them uh, mentally ready, of what could happen. So
I love all those scenarios and questions that you're using to test. It sounds a little bit like, how do you deal with the vengeful person? How do you deal with the overly needy person? And then let's make sure our house is in order so that everyone's rowing in the, you know, the correct direction and on board with what we're about to do.
right.
Perfect. Well, Mitch, we covered a lot of content today over all the spectrum of
Mhm.
why and how to invest. I really appreciate everything that you gave us. Thank you for being here. I know we've got people who probably are saying, okay, what do I do next? So we've got a couple action items for you that you can be focusing on after this webinar. So the first one is, let's educate ourselves with online resources, forums, and courses. Let's get that information that we need so that when someone is asking questions, either we can send them in the right direction or we're building our sphere and you know, knowledge base. Number two, let's actually get out there, find a local investment group and start networking there. Let's grow our sphere, grow those connections. And then number three, if we are actually looking to be investing, you know, maybe start identifying or working with an investor-friendly agent. Or if you're an agent who just doesn't have as much experience, maybe that's a mentor for you to start getting better at what you're doing and understanding the investing side. So those are three steps that we can be doing. We're going to open it up for Q&A here. On the next slide, we've got all of Mitch's contact information, as well as a QR code that will redirect you to his course on investing if you're interested in learning a little bit about that. So Mitch, again, thank you so much for presenting to us, and we're going to open up the floor now for some Q&A.
Yeah, if I could just say one thing,
Yeah.
um, the investor series, I set it up so agents can send their clients there and have this base knowledge of education. So it's probably a good idea that the agent does it, and then they can send their client over, and all of a sudden everybody's on the same page. It's really from beginning to end, uh, on, you know, setting your goals and should I do third party management or myself. It's probably about an hour and a half. A Q&A at the end of each module, but it's a good base for it for your clients.
I
Sorry,
love that. So
shameless plug.
yeah, I love that. You know, again, it's setting expectations. What are the expectations for me, you know, working with you, and what are the expectations for you as the, you know, the investor? So I think it makes a lot of sense in what we're doing. So we got a question here. This one's a little personal here, Mitch. It says you mentioned 32 properties free and clear and also mentioned leverage. Why didn't you leverage your 32 properties, or why did you decide to pay them off?
Um, Boy, that's a great question. Thank you for asking that. So, I leveraged when I started, and I didn't want to over leverage. But when I got into it again, I was talking to the old guy in the room, and he said, you don't make money for the first 10 years. And I don't know if I was cocky or confident, but I just felt like, no, not me, because I felt like I was going to educate myself, and I'll show you. So if you take 10 years forward, which was 2008, we all got our butts handed to us. And I just felt like in 2010 and 11, I just felt like, what am I doing here? I've got all these, at the time I had 24 properties. I just felt like I wasn't getting anywhere. And again, sometimes when you ask the universe for answers, now we have the internet too, um, you'll get answers. So I wanted to find out how much is enough, and um, typed in setting your real estate goals. And this article came up. It said, if you think that you need $10 million in real estate, you have an ego problem, which if anybody knows me out there, all right, maybe I have a little bit, um, but basically this article went into, we're trying to replace our cash flow, which is what we covered here. So basically what it says is, if you pay off your property, why have more property when you probably have enough property if you just pay them off, right? So pick a number. Let's say I have $5 million in real estate, free and clear. And, someone asked about leveraging. So I could leverage it. So, but if you have $5 million in property and I'm going to go get a loan on it, would you take out a loan of $4 million in that property and go invest it in more property? You could. Or would you put it in the stock market? Maybe. But I can tell you, having these properties paid off, again, I'm sleeping at night. So
I love that answer. It's
I
kind
hope
of,
I answered the question.
I think it comes down to identifying what are your goals with investing, and then how do you sleep at night? And those two have to be congruent with each other to make sure that it's the right fit. So it sounds like, for you, it was really key to just saying, what are my goals? How do I achieve those? And once I hit that, how do I sleep at night?
Mhm.
So I think that's a great answer. In
Cool.
terms of, this is another great question here. We've got one that says, would working with an investor who plans to purchase properties outright with all cash be any different or easier? I imagine the easier is more on like educating them and just working, not so much obviously the deal side of it, because if you're all cash, it's easier to close, but just how that relationship dynamic works.
Yeah, I mean, it's cash is king, right? I mean, we've heard it a million times. If you see an offer, if you're selling a house and you see a cash offer, and typically there's no delays on financing, or typically, and not even appraisal for that matter, unless depending on how you write the contract. Um, but all of a sudden you can close a lot quicker. You're removing obstacles for a seller to sell it to you at a discount. Um, so for me to pay less, I'm paying cash. So that's why I'm asking for a discount, because I'm not going to trip it up. So cash, 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 if you can.
Yeah.
So what I've seen people do, this is a way to kind of leverage your portfolio, is you do go buy cash, you fix it up, and then you go to a bank and say, hey, I want to take out my money, what I have in it. And sometimes banks require a seasoning. It could be 6 months or a year. But after 6 months or a year, you can go get an 80% loan on the improved value and put that down payment back in your money to go buy the next property.
I love that. So you instantly, not instantly, but you increase your cash amount just by having improved it and then refinancing it at the higher amount and getting it all back out. So I
That's
love
how I
that.
built my portfolio. And once I got to a number I felt like I can live with, that's when I decided to start paying it off.
That makes sense. In terms of, this question is about a home warranty. Do you recommend buying one for your first rental property? Yes or no?
I do not. You ask agents out there, I would say that they don't always cover everything, and they're not always as responsive as what your tenant needs. Sometimes they want payment immediately before they even show up. A lot of times, they'll do a replacement versus repair. Sometimes you don't need to do that. So I just haven't had any luck with it. So that's the short answer.
That makes sense. In terms of, we got a question here on cap rate. What is the cap rate that you decide to invest in a property?
So there's three ways to value a property. Cap rate is one of them. You've got another one is like gross month multiplier. So you've heard of the 1% rule. You know, if it's $1,000 rental, then don't pay more than $100,000 for the property. And the third one is cash on cash return. So cap rates are used a lot in the commercial side. For me, I can run my numbers quicker in my head, especially, you know, when you're doing stuff quickly. I do a combination of cash on cash return and my multiplier. If I had to look at my cap rates, it's probably around 12%.
Perfect. I love that. So we got three different ways there, not just cap rate, of ways that we can kind of analyze the investment itself. And as Mitch says, cap rate, he sometimes uses it more on the commercial side as opposed to the residential side. So some food for thought there as we're looking at, you know, what's a good investment for us. So we got a question here on what's your opinion on using your Roth IRA to invest?
Um, I want to see the whole picture. How does that fit into the rest of what you're doing? If I don't think it's a bad idea. I just think it's got a, you know, are you buying a $250,000 property because you have $1 million in your, you know, your retirement accounts? So I think that just, you need to look at the entire picture and you got to understand the obstacles of working with a custodian. They're sometimes the working with them, for example, if you have to replace that roof, it might take a week to get that money out from them and you have to provide a quote. I'm not saying no, I'm just saying it has to be part of the whole picture and there is a little bit of a rub of getting your own money back. So, not a bad idea in the grand scheme of things.
It sounds like the answer on that one is it depends.
It depends. It depends. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that makes sense. I think, you know, you got to look at the full picture and say, one, what are my goals? Going back to what you answered way early on there, and then looking at the picture and saying, does that match and does it help me achieve them? So it depends on how things line up.
Mhm.
Um, all right. Well, we got one more question here. This is specific to your course, Mitch, and they were asking, how much does it cost to enroll in your course, or what does it look like to enroll?
Right. I I wanted to. I didn't. You know, I'm not a $10,000 a weekend boot camp type person. I thought 999 was fair. I think if you have yourself or your client watches it, they're gonna save $1,000 on the first deal, no problem. Um, so we thought 999 was the right number. So we'll see. Right.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, again, it comes down to getting them into the right property, closing that deal, and you know, at the end of the day, if it makes the deal successful and reaches the goals, that is well worth its weight in gold in the sense of how many headaches and just kind of nightmares that you avoid
Right.
in the investing sphere. So I love it. Do you have any closing thoughts for people as we kind of wrap up here and just something you like to leave people with to chew on?
Yeah, I'll just say this, that again, the journey is long, is worth it. When you start seeing the cash flow coming in, um, it's just so powerful. The whole goal of it is I wanted to find something that allowed me to live the life that I wanted to live for myself and my family. And real estate was the avenue to do it. Now, it took 20, 25 years, and I'll tell you that it, in the infamous words of AC/DC, it ain't no fun waiting around to be a millionaire. So take that.
I love that. We have one question here. It's not so much a question, but I just want to make you aware of it, Mitch. Someone asked about a group class. I'm going to direct them to shoot you an email and let y'all talk. So Vanessa, if you can shoot Mitch an email at the address sitting there on the screen, y'all can talk about that. So, all right, folks, we are close to the hour here. We really appreciate all of y'all being here. We really appreciate Mitch presenting to us. He gave us a lot to think about, a lot to chew on. So Mitch, thank you so much for being here. And we really appreciate everything you presented to us today.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Rental Bees. Go out and buy something.
I love it. All right, folks, have a great afternoon and we'll see you for our next one.
All right.